Welcome back to another episode of The Winner's Culture, where we like to highlight the journey to success, not the glory that you often see. We back with another very special episode. I got my co-host with me to my left.
Hey, y'all, it's Blondie.
And to my right.
It's just JJ.
Y'all know me, man. 1 R, 1 Y, 1 L, just Daryl. Don't get it twisted. Don't add no letters. So like I said, another special episode, man. This is definitely dear to my heart. I got my guy in the building. I got my brother Dev with us. How you feeling, Brody?
I'm good, man. Appreciate it.
What's going on, good brother?
I appreciate you coming.
Like, it's been a long time coming. I've
For
been
a
waiting
fact.
for this moment.
I've been waiting. He got something to say.
Hey, yo, Dre, I got something to say. Facts. No, but I definitely appreciate you coming.
No, for sure, man.
For the people that don't know what you do, don't know who you are, don't know anything about your background, could you just introduce yourself, let the people know?
Yeah. My name is Devin. Obviously, I do a lot of things. Honestly, I'm a production company owner. Noir Films. I'm a cinematographer, videographer, creative director, producer. Like, I've wore many hats over time. Editor, like, you can't name it, over time. So I've been blessed, and now to grow as a production company owner. Within the next year or two. It's been blessings. So yeah.
So how did you get into the whole thing, like to digital content creation and all that?
The world of media.
Oh man, honestly though, like, I did not know, like, because I used to watch TV. Like, obviously we all watch TV growing up or whatever, but like, I had a big fan of sports at the time, and as I was growing, my mother, granted, blessings to my mother, that she was like, yo, you love sports, why don't you try this, media route in itself? Well, I didn't really know what that entailed over time, and I was still involved with friends here and there that were kind of involved with it, but I didn't really know, like, per se what that really meant, like photographers. Like, I didn't know, like, what you really had to do. So as growing up now, my mother was like, well, why don't you just try? We went to go visit a school, which we'll probably get into later, but yeah, and I started realizing, like, oh, people are making out of this, like, and content is growing over time. This is what, 2012, 2011, whatever. So even before that, I was like, oh, okay, this might be a thing. And I kind of just started to fall in love with it a little kid, like, just being creative, and just started to realize, like, oh, this is actually, like, different from, anything else that I've known. Like, I was like a computer kid, to be honest. So, like, I was like more of like, I love computers and like solving things and, like, more the engineering side. But then I was like, oh, I can also involve this with the creative side as well. So that kind of involved, and I fell in love with that more. So yeah.
So you said 2011, 2012. That's high school?
Yeah.
So you started like getting on this path in high school. What was it? Matter of fact, where you went to high school?
My senior bonder, man. Delaware County. That's where I grew up. If y'all don't know.
That's what's up, man. Shout out to Delaware County. I heard a lot of horror stories from Bonner though, so like I'm glad you made it out there.
Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying? Like,
listen, it's a little struggle, but I mean, we got there. Don't hate on it, but
But no, in all seriousness, so like in high school, like what was you doing to work towards it in high school? You feel what I'm saying? Like, what was the mindset? Because I didn't even know.
Me neither.
I didn't even know that you was on that already.
Nah, I mean, we had, because remember, I had like a high school program that, like, they even had like TV stuff, and I wasn't even involved with that. I was more involved with the sports and, like, trying to get through school or whatever. So, I wasn't really like heavy on that at the time. But I started seeing people, like, utilizing phones. That's when phones were growing too. You got to remember, like, iPhones started picking up. We didn't have those flip phones no more, so things were like, getting recorded. Like, we're like, oh, everything can be recorded now. So things changed over time. It didn't exactly start at high school, but I think that's when I started getting to, like, oh, this might be a thing. And then, once I started visiting schools, I'm like, oh, this is the real deal. So yeah, that's what came about over time. So.
Remember? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you remember the first time you specifically picked up a camera?
Oh man. Yeah. So when I, got my scholarship and I picked up a camera, when I picked it up, I think I got it from Best Buy. It was like $600. It was like Nikon D3300 or whatever. So
photographer for real. Yeah. You know the exact model and make.
Like, never forget your entry model, bro.
Hey, for all my photographers out there, I understand. Like, and at the time, like, the prices is high now too, compared to like what it was like 10 years ago. So it still was kind of high back then. 'Cause I barely was even working. So I had to get a job. But, luckily when I picked up that first camera, I just started shooting. Like, I don't know. Like, I just started hitting up friends. Like, you guys know this. Like, I started picking up anybody that would, like, want to shoot with me. Like, I didn't care what it was. And I was doing it for free. So at the time, I was like, you know what? Let me just try this over time. And I remember the first time, like, just looking at the D3300, like, how do you work this thing? Like, just trying to see how you even, like, hit record and all that stuff. And, I was in my basement trying to, like, just figure things out. And, the rest was history from there.
So what about your first edit? You remember how that went? With the story behind that?
Man, my first edit, I was like, this goes back to my basement. Like, I was literally stuck in the basement. Like, how do you even, like, well, let me not say this, because I started editing in school towards, like, Temple, when I started at Temple. So when I started there, we were using Final Cut at the time. So I was like, okay, this is how you, kind of edit in itself. But, like, my first real edit was more of, like, for myself. When I first picked up the camera when I recorded it, I had Premiere. I think I actually, like, what's it called? Like not proxied it, but, like, you didn't pay for it. So I was like, yeah. So I didn't pay for it. So I was like, yo.
Got it off LimeWire?
I was like,
yo, this guy.
Got off somewhere. I said, yo, I bootleg this joint. I said,
every day.
I need to figure out how to edit this or whatever. And, at the time, I don't think they making that happen anymore. But at that time, I was like, I got to figure out how I couldn't use iMovie. I'm like, this is ridiculous. And I knew kind of Final Cut, but I couldn't afford it at the time. So I was like, you know what, let me just see if I could bootleg this. And, I went to the basement. I edited one of my friend's workout videos, and he loved it. He was like, yo, you good at this. And I was like,
shout out to Avery.
You look back at that joint now, that joint is terrible.
That was one of Pop's joint?
Yeah.
His first
I think I still have that video to this day. And he's like, man. Like,
I remember the shots from that. From, like, when you were shooting at Bonner Field, though, they was hot. The shots was hot. I didn't even know a video existed.
Me neither.
But you made it, though.
Nah, I made it. I just told him go here. Like, let's just, whatever. Like, music was hot. I think DJ Khaled dropped some music around that time. I said, I got to edit to this.
Right.
So I said, all right, let me just, finagle that. And I got hyped just editing. I got the love for it. I was like, oh, damn, I feel good. Like, just putting that out. And, like, people showing love to it, too. Like, yo, this is fire, da. Obviously, now you show it now, it's not fire. But, over time, back then, it was like, oh, this is going to improve over time. So, feeling that love from other people and getting that recognition was, real love. So, I appreciate that.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, you said you had ended up going to Temple. What did you go to school for? Like, what was your major?
So at the time, started out was like broadcasting communication. They were mainly focused when I first going back to my mother's story. They were more focused on like the TV portion, but they were just forming into more of the media studies and production, which is what it was. I think when I got to 2013, 2014, my junior year or senior, and once that formed, I also started seeing people come out of that. If you guys remember, DJ Damage was whatever. But they were like, when I first walked into the school, like when I visited, I was like, they were showing like different people that came out of that from the school itself, and like showing. I'm like, oh, this person was around here, or like, people like even on SportsCenter on ESPN. Like I started seeing people that that I actually worked with previously now, which is crazy. But seeing those people, you're like, oh, this is possible. Like, and they're coming from my city, like. Yeah. I didn't know that at all. So, like, seeing that kind of motivated me, like, oh, that was a sell to me right there. And, I, sitting in rooms with different people, I'm like, okay, this is possible. And, yeah, I mean, the rest was history. Obviously, being from Philly, I was like, all right, this is, kind of destined. And, also seeing other people go to that school that, I was familiar with. So, it kind of helped that over time, so.
What did you learn from, like, was there anything that you learned from Temple that you took with you? Like, was it a very helpful program, or you felt like?
What's funny? I actually just reached out to a professor previously, probably like 6 months, no, probably a couple months ago. There was a couple, because, you go to school, I ain't gonna lie to you. Like, I love college, but I also hate it just because it's like, I feel like it's a scam at times just because, like.
Temple check, too.
Yeah. Well, at least back then, like, it's way more money now, thank God. But, I still trying to pay off the student loans. By the way.
Come on, Joey.
But yeah,
can you do something for me?
But yeah, as far as like Temple per se, like I was like, okay, this is, I have to figure out who, you know, I think they mainly taught me to network. I didn't realize, like, going to a school, like, oh, I got to step out my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Like, this is a different acumen because, like, once you start, you know, talking to different people, obviously I have friends in high school and this, that, and forth, and meeting with counselors, like, maybe here and there, but barely that.
Yeah.
You thought it was just fun and games until you got to school. You're like, I got to do the work.
Yeah.
And I ain't gonna lie to you, freshman year was not ideal. I was like, oh, this is real. And like also living on campus for only like a year or so. So I was like, oh, okay, I got to get my stuff together. And starting to realize, like, at least for Temple, like, they actually also, you know, coming back to my professor's standpoint, like, they challenge you, like, from a storytelling standpoint or, like, you know, like, I used to think, like, when I did videos or, like, you know, group projects or whatever, like, oh, you know, I'm top of the notch, or at least not top of the notch, but at least, like, I can do this or whatever. Yeah. And they would just humble me, like, nah, this ain't what it is. And, you know, learning that process over time, I had to realize, like, oh, this is not, you can't do it by yourself either. This is a learning process, and you need people to help you down the road. So for that, you know, Temple, you know, gave me that path over time, and they had some quality professors that were like, you know, take you to that path and actually give you the real thing. They even had TV programs to even show you, like, this is how you might do in the real world, just to test those things. Not every school is going to be able to do that.
That's a fact.
So I appreciate that wholeheartedly. But at the same time, like, you know, I learned the ins and outs of a camera, but I didn't learn everything in school, which is why I go back to the, you know, school was a scam a little kid, because I wonder if I would have known or at least picked up a camera before I even went to school, if I would have did the same thing I would have did before. Not necessarily saying that, you know, I did learn the business side of things a little bit from here and there. And, like, you know, I've been grateful to do that because education is important. Let me not say, like, education is important, but at the same time, those things, I don't know. I think you can also learn those things over time if you put the due diligence. But I also was young, so, you know, I have to put that into play as well. And sometimes you need, you know, older folks, or at least, like, people that have the knowledge to show you those things over time. And maybe school does, you know, apply that.
What did the demographics look like in the program? Like, was you the only black, or was it a good amount of y'all? Did it feel comfortable?
Yeah, it was pretty comfortable. I mean, Temple's pretty diverse. I wouldn't say, like, it was like, oh my God, like, nah, like, I definitely needed, like, because I definitely learned more, you know, after the fact over time, like, especially, you know, being a black man over time. But I think seeing that, like, you know, it was possible seeing, like, I even had friends that worked in film school as well. So that were black. So I was like, okay, this was a little bit diverse over time, and I can learn from different people that, you know, understood me as well. But it was pretty hard just because all my professors were white. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what do they understand about?
Yeah, about your perspective.
Like, oh, why would I put this inkling in there? And I feel like now my work today is completely different because they might not understand that if I put that, you know, today, or, you know what I mean? So I think that kind of had a play because they were kind of old school in the sense where, like, oh, this is what you should do. This is how you should do it. And, you know, you go about that way. But I realized, you know, they thought my path would be their path.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's why I'm kind of, like, you know, was up and down about school and itself, just because, like, you know, this is how they did it. You know what I mean? Like, some of the former professors were, like, producers or, like, people on TV or editors or whoever it is, you know what I mean? But same time, you also did have a networking where you could build that, and they had those connections over time, so you kind of had to utilize that. So you're like, oh, well,
it's a difference.
I got to do it, like, you know what I mean? So, you know, that stuff matters, but it built over time. So
I think it's interesting that you pointed that out because it kind of brings up, like, the thought of, like, a traditional route versus a true or pure creative route. Yeah. Like, you know, what some people would consider to be acceptable or the right way to go about things. Right. And then you also mentioning that, you know, like a lot of your professors were white. So how do they relate to the messages that you're trying to create? Yeah. One of the questions we wanted to ask was, like, I know you got a scholarship from the Philadelphia Association of Black Journalists.
Yeah.
Did that help? Yeah, shout out to them. Did that help, I guess, or inspire you in any way as far as your creative journey, or help you, I think, to identify with any of those people there?
Yeah. You know, it's funny, like, you really don't realize, like, what's really out there, just in life in general, because especially, you know, we all know, like, we need help, especially being a minority. Like, when somebody reaches out their hand, you know, you grab their hand just because, you know, you might need that help over time. And luckily I was able to get that, you know, through an internship over time. And, you know, going through an internship when I was at CBS Philadelphia, you know, I went to a news outlet. I'm like, oh, this is majority white people. Like at these news stations, like, oh, they handle all this stuff. And then, you know, you start seeing like inklings here and there, you know, certain, you know, people minority or whatever. And then like, but then there's like maybe one or two that are higher ups or this, that, and forth that might be like, oh, let me help you or whatever. And luckily I was able to get that and to find a mentor during that time frame. So he just, you know, saw something in me. I don't know what it was. He just saw the kid in me that was just like, yo, like, I think you know, should be able to, you know, accomplish some things. And he reached out. You know, I still only go, I think the intern for like only 3 days or so over time, but he used to just like, he just pulled me to the side. He was like, yo, you should try to apply for the scholarship, da-da-da. I was like, okay, well, what do I got to do? Da-da-da. He's like, you got to write this essay, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'll be honest, I don't like writing. I'm just like, you know what I mean? Like, I like writing here and there, but not that much. Like, I was just like, essays was not like my per se, like even in school in general growing up, but I was like, you know, I can get through it here and there. And, you know, but I mean, the essay wasn't too complicated. You know, I kind of wrote off the dome in itself. I didn't really think it was going to be looked over time, but yeah, I mean, luckily I was chosen. I guess they also like my work at Temple and going to school and seeing, you know, obviously I had, you know, requirements to do that over time with GPA and stuff or whatever. But yeah, and then that kind of changed the dynamic because then I started going into meetings with different people, especially, you know, I didn't realize also Philly had like this many black journalists or like even people in general in like in this city that were in my field that, you know, all came together at once. Like that is amazing to me, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm glad that's just that, you know, it's growing over time because, you know, we need that over time to even get that help over time.
That's a fact.
And to get that knowledge just from someone to even reach out their hand and give that to me, it was kind of like helpful. And that kind of changed the game because now they gave me $1,000. They were saying, yo, you can choose to pick up a camera or, you know, apply to tuition. And I was like, man, I'm picking up a camera. Like, I don't know what y'all talking about, whatever. Just because I'm like, yo, like, I can probably, you know, see what happens from here and maybe make some money back. I don't really know. At the time, I wasn't really thinking about money, but I was like, you know what? Let's just see what happens. Because I knew cameras were expensive, but I didn't know they was that expensive.
That's a fact.
That, you know, came about. And then once I, you know, got that scholarship, you know, they were strict too. They were like, yo, here's the check, but we need to see receipts. We need to see this, blah, blah, blah. So I showed them, blah, blah, blah. They were, okay, perfect, da, da, da. And then sky's the limit. So I thank them. I thank you, PABJ, for everything. That kind of skyrocketed my career to where it is today. So very, very much blessed for that reason.
I didn't even know that was a thing. Like I never even heard of that. Or
Me
like, probably because I'm not a journalist.
Until he told me.
Till now, I guess.
That's what I'm saying.
Like,
but
like,
resources.
You gotta think like, you know what I mean? Like me being in the field, I didn't know. You know what I mean? So like, it's not something like Temple was like, oh, this is
like,
PABJ. Like I had to go find out, or at least, you know, somebody reaching out their hand to say, hey, like this is a thing.
Right.
So you never really know. So that goes to say that, you know, continue to, you know, talk to people or at least, you know, show your notion of kindness or anything that, you know, somebody might actually give you an opportunity somewhere.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
If you had to put a guesstimate on how much you think that $1,000 invested into that camera brought you back, what would the number be?
Wait, so repeat that. So
if you had to put a guesstimate, like not an accurate number, but if just whatever you think the ballpark is, they gave you $1,000 to put towards the camera. What did you see on the back end? Like what you think that number is?
Oh man, I don't even know.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. Did you make your money back?
Oh, I did. Like 1,000%. But like a lot of money has transpired over time. So like so much money has been spent since that one camera itself that has gained. So I can't even like fathom, like, I mean, it's thousands of dollars, bro. Like,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Bet on yourself.
Yeah. Like,
literally.
Nah, I mean, I think over time, like, I've seen money that I've never seen that thought I would even see before just because of that one instance. So, that changes the necessary, but, you know.
So when it comes to business, like, from that standpoint of trying to make your money back or seeing, like, it's a lot of people with a camera though. Like everybody got a camera.
Now
like,
it's definitely a lot of people.
You feel what I'm saying? It's a lot of people with a podcast. A lot of people that rap. A lot of people do hair. Like it's a lot of people that do a lot of things.
Yeah, do it.
What's your strategy to like stand out and distinguish yourself?
Man, I don't even know. Honestly, it's literally trying. I mean, obviously you want to be different. That's, you know, it's hard to be different because everybody's doing the same thing. But at the same time, you have your own creative notion of what people gravitate to what you do best is what you do best. If you sell shoes, you sell shoes at a different rate than somebody else does. It also requires effort. Effort is number one. If you don't have effort, nothing is going to be done regardless. But at the same time, content right now is like, especially nowadays, like everything wants to be reshared and this, that, for. It has to be reshareable content. If it's not, because everybody can make content, but can it be effective? Can it be like you guys watch TV shows or movies? You're like, oh, I got to watch that again just because you know how good it was. So I try to use that same notion with video content. Like, do you get the same effect watching my content or, edits or pieces or whatever I do to create that? Is it going to be long lasting? I still have edits till this day that are probably getting repurposed just because, it was that great over time. And it's reclaiming the same message it did 3 years ago or 4 years ago, whatever. Did I think that was going to happen? No. But at the same time, I feel like that gravitated and I started realizing like sometimes you also have to put an extra effort into your edit. Because sometimes we get complacent with, oh, well, this is good, da-da-da, you watch it through and you're done, which is usually the case sometimes. You're like, man, I'm done. Like, I don't want to touch it. Or at least creating anything, whether you're directing, producing, or whatever. But sometimes there are also things where you're like, I could probably go extra mile. And that's anything in life in general. So that way you can probably stand out a little bit more. And, that's part of, the journey itself.
So at this point, you got multiple edits with millions of views, right? So you started like understanding your sauce. You feel what I'm saying? Like you started getting your understanding your thing. So like, what do you look for when you go in there? Like, I know this piece going to hit, because I feel like when you put it out, you be having a strong feeling. Yeah, I know this piece going to hit.
Nah, that's a fact. There's a couple ones I was like, I mean, I ain't gonna lie, like being a creator or anything creative in general, you're like, you don't really know sometimes. You're just like, just get it out, and then boom, it just like. These things just hit out of nowhere that you didn't really expect it to be. There were a couple ones I was like, I ain't gonna lie to you, like I gave that Kobe fist pump like after
a couple jokes. I'm like, this one of them.
Like you would just watch something and you would watch it over and over and over and over.
Yeah, okay.
And it'd be late at night, 3 a.m., 4 a.m. You're like, oh, I'm about. Can I curse on here? I don't want to curse on here. Go ahead. I'm gonna fuck them up.
The hoes going left.
Yo,
he said Birdman hand rub like.
Oh, fuck them up. But, like real rap, because at least those things you just like it just happens over time. But you also have those things too where you think it's gonna happen, but then you get let down because it doesn't happen. So
right.
It's a highs and lows to that over time. Like, but I do appreciate like the ones that like I didn't see coming just because it's like it feels like it's more rewarding in itself just because you put a lot of effort into it and you also, I mean, I'm one to like, I don't want to put myself down, but also I want to like have a standard where I'm like, I mean, I think this is okay, but I know I could do better. Yeah. But, from another person's perspective, they might be like, oh, no, this is dope, da-da-da. But, like, I'm not, realizing that because I know I probably could have put a little bit more in or at least, did something different, at least watching it through. But, yeah, I mean, getting that recognition over time, I'm like, oh, this is a different acumen. I also didn't know, like, I remember, like, viral wasn't really, like, a thing. Like it was a thing, but it was, like, now it's, like, different to different levels. Also, it was very challenging because, like I said, reshareable content. How many people are actually going to care about to reshare your stuff and comment on it at the same time? So that stuff matters. So yeah, I mean, there've been a couple notions where I was like, yeah, this is that. But most of the time, I'm like, you really don't know. I ain't gonna lie to you.
Do y'all believe it's important to strive for like individuality in your craft and like as artists and stuff, or do you feel it's more important to follow trends and stay with what's relevant?
I think that's a good question. For myself, I think it's more important to like strive for individuality. But the reason why I feel like that is because I think the other way actually more like successful, like on a broader term. Like if you can stay consistent in doing what everybody else is doing, you're more likely to find success. Carving your own path and telling, like, people don't just, especially in Philly, people don't just hop on to what's different and gravitate to it. But for me, like, individuality is important because it keep like the passion for me. Like it it keep me attached to the thing in a way that I feel like just going through the motions in order to like achieve some like destination and success. I feel like I'd get bored with that.
Mm.
Oh, I didn't know if you want to go.
This is up to you.
So I want to. Can you repeat the second part of your question?
I said, do you feel like it's important to strive for individuality in a craft or as an artist, or do you feel like it's more important to stay with trends or, you know, do what's the most relevant?
Okay. Yeah, at least from my perspective, like, I mean, going back to JJ said, it definitely is honing your craft over time because that's going to really, you know, keep your foundation. For individuality, this is a hard question just because also nowadays, though, trends are important, though. So you also have to stay grounded and also pay attention to what's going on around your surroundings, or at least, you know, what you're doing. At least in my field, I don't know, everybody else is different depending on what they do. Just because also, you know, things are changing, you have to adapt. Adaptability is, you know, apparent over time. It's 2022 now. Like, things were different than it was 10 years ago. So, try to answer your question. Individuality is definitely more important, but at the same time, you know, setting trends and different things, I think that still has a play over time, just because it is needed, you know, to a certain extent.
Yeah, I definitely feel like if you take it too far left, you could easily lose your.
So, like,
lose your
where's the
crowd.
balance of standing out and fitting in?
That's what I was gonna kind of touch on.
Like, where's the
That's what I was gonna touch on. I think first it depends on the craft, but secondly, I think you can have where you strive to be so different that you get away from being yourself.
Yeah.
And then I think you can strive to focus so much on participating or functioning under the trends that you lose, again, the essence of yourself, and which really makes, I would say, your content or whatever craft you're performing or operating in special. So for me, like, you see examples is like, I think when artists will do stuff that we just consider to be completely odd, like, you know what I mean? Just
like, honestly, never mind.
I don't even know who that is. Who that?
That's
Drake album.
Drake. Yeah, I was like, that's why I said, wow.
That's no shade. I mean,
it is. He just dissed a lot of women. You can get back.
this is true.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
The material is there. The material is
You still gonna listen though?
I am absolutely 100%. But it was off brand.
I feel like when you do something that, like I said, we just all could socially agree, like, this is odd. It's just like, this is not different. You're just, this is odd. Or you, like, you know, you do something like harming yourself. It's like, that's not different. You're just hurting yourself on camera. Like, different trends like that. Like, I feel like that type of stuff is where you're getting away from who you are. But if you are functioning, I think, striving to be different, like, if everybody wants to, I don't know, use the same packages for their edits or the same style of shots as far as their videos, and you say, hey, I want to tell more of a story, or I want to show that I can give you more of a narrative, even if the song is a harder song about whatever the case may be. I think that is an example of being different rather than just following the trend.
Yeah,
That's what
I think
say.
a signature is important.
Yeah.
Like, throughout it all. Because at the end of the day, people are going to go to or want to do business with who they like, because we all could do the same thing, but each of us would have a different signature. Just like an artist, all four of us could paint the same photo or the same something, and it will look different. One, because we're all different people, and two, because we'll have different signatures and how we've conceptualized it and made it, like, you know, reality.
We're going to quote that. I like that.
It's a bar.
Yeah. I feel like one thing I learned.
See? I need to be in the studio, right?
She started taking it far. And, I'm trying
Dream
to stay.
killers on the right.
Right?
Oh, that's crazy.
He's a hater.
No. We gonna definitely get blinded.
He's a hater.
Listen. Look out for that new Blondie track. It's coming soon. Proud by It's Just JJ. We do all things around here.
You already know.
But no, I was just about to talk about music though, in the sense that one thing I definitely learned is that by following the trends, like by doing what everybody else does, or following the blueprint of someone else consistently, you develop your individuality. So it's like, so like if you start off trying to be left, a lot of times they don't hit. Like, you never hit because you never learn none of this stuff that the core foundation.
Fundamentals.
Yeah, the fundamentals. You know exactly what I'm talking about. But like, if you stay on the fundamentals consistently enough, then you start changing into like a thing. And I see that all the time. Some of my favorite artists, shout out to like Baltimore. You feel what I'm saying? You can clearly hear a lot of times when who his inspiration was, but then you can hear where it branched, where it started going somewhere else. Yeah. Or when I think about a lot of rappers I work with, I can clearly hear who their inspirations are, and then you can see where they took it from where they started from. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm glad you said that though, just because that's important to learn from other people too. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, because obviously they're doing what they're saying. Like, go back to what you say, signatures. Like, obviously they have their own way of doing things over time. But can you at least take a notion or at least take something from that and put it in your own realm? Yeah. I mean, even in the editing space or at least creating space, you're not going to be able to create all the same, like, different things you want to. Like, there are going to be things you're like, oh, I might need to use that just to try. And you can also manipulate it in a different way, and, you know, it can take off in different ways for you. And then like, you also have your old things where it can, you know, differentiate for yourself. So
on that same note, while we talking about development, like, what's some things that you do to, like, develop your craft, to, like, take it to the next level?
Prayer.
I feel that.
Prayer is definitely important. I mean, obviously, like, because, I mean, without God, at least for me, like, gifts don't come, like, you can obviously develop things, but it also comes naturally. Like, I didn't think growing up, like, I had this type of mindset over time. Like, sometimes it just came to me, and I can also create. So that's number one blessing. But also, too, it's practice makes perfect. Going out and doing it, like, taking advantage of your opportunities over time, and just go out and create. Like, nowadays you have like nothing to really say that you can't actually go out to go and create something. Like, there's always something that you can go out to do and try to do it as the best you can do. And if you don't want to do it, then that might not be your fully passion. Just because there's a lot out there that, you know, to create that you can, you know, disseminate over time. So at least for me, like, it's mainly practice make perfect, going out and do it. Like, when I first started, it was more of like getting with the reps. Like, reps are very important. Experience is very important. You know, obviously, you know, going into like the 9-to-5 job or this, that, and forth, like, you know, they say, oh, well, I don't need too much experience, this, that, and forth. But you actually kind of need to, just because you need to go gain that knowledge. Yeah. And knowledge is important. So that's number one. Number two, exactly. And then three, obviously, networking. You know, that's how I develop, you know, working with different people. You know, seeing how they do things over time, so that way I can kind of, you know, develop different skills, because obviously I can learn through YouTube as well. Let me also say, like, YouTube has definitely changed the game in terms of learning different things. Obviously now with the algorithm,
shout
out
YouTube University.
YouTube University, like, honestly, that's honestly how I learned half the things to edit, to be honest. You know, I learned how to, like, at least put things together, but at least from, like, the programs and all the other stuff, learning through YouTube and, like, also seeing other people, I was just like, oh, I could have did this, like, at home.
Could have been doing
this. Yeah, like, what is going on? And, you know,
really make you feel that way.
Nah, exactly. Like, and, you know, it's doable if you just sit down and actually, you know, hone into your craft and, you know, develop that over time. And also, don't be afraid to learn new things. Like, you know, sometimes things do take time. I ain't gonna lie. There'll be times I'll be like, yo, this is gonna take too long. Like, I might just pay somebody to do this. But at the same time, you know, you got to balance your ways and also learn things, you know, over time. Even if you were to pay somebody to do this, like, learn how the process is and what they're actually doing over time. So that way you respect their craft as well. So that way, you know, it's a collaborative effort, you know, over time.
I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel that. Man, I was going to say, like, over the time, like, so far on your journey, do you have any specific moments where you felt like you took a loss, or, like, maybe had a moment that gave you a major lesson that you still carry today? He like, man, there's plenty of them.
Yeah, I don't even, like, there's a lot of losses, man, over time. I mean, that's part of the journey.
Were there any that made you rethink your choice of, like, in career path?
Yeah. Going to a corporate job definitely changed that acumen, just because it was a blessing in disguise. I feel that. Yeah, I think, you know, we go into things like, oh, you know, these big time corporate, you know, jobs, or, you know.
So corporate job, who we talking about?
We talking about ESPN.
Okay.
Let me not say like I love ESPN. Okay, I'm just gonna get off the record. It definitely changed, for what I was able to do over time, and they provided me a different thing that I was able to, gain over time, the experience. But I also did learn, at least the part of it that there is a different business side of things that, we don't really know. And I feel like it's also a cycle. It is literally a factory. Things are like, you are like, I'm not saying everybody's replaceable, but most people are. Not everybody, but, at least from my perspective, I was like, oh, okay, well, I can go in here and thinking, I know things, and, you work with different people, and over time, it need me different, but you also realize, like, you're not always the best. Like, which, ESPN did challenge me that on time, but also I realized, like, being a minority, too, wasn't ideal because you have to go extra obstacles just to get to where you want to be. And why do I have to do that? Why do I have to continue to prove to you, even though you give me the recognition to be like, hey, this is dope, this is that forth, and what is that going to give me over time? And I had to learn that, throughout my 4 years there, just because it was like, how do I process to get to a certain level that I want to do, and do I want to do those things for the rest of my life? And learning and seeing those higher ups, or at least, people that were above you, they're like, oh, you do this for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? Yeah. And you still been here? I'm like, oh, this ain't ideal. Like, I might be cool. It's
not that much space to grow all the time.
That's real rap, though.
You never know. And I grew up like, my parents were very like, structured and, 9 to 5. Like my dad's been at his job for plenty of years, and my mom, has been different jobs, but, this is what they knew. And coming from a, Haitian culture, like this is what I grew up on. So like, to me to go in my field, this was what they didn't know at all. They were like, well, this is different. So, to see that perspective now, it's like, oh, I didn't really, because if you asked me 10 years ago, I would like to be an entrepreneur or anything in general, I would have told you it was crazy. Like, I was like, yo, what is, like, how do you even learn this? How do you even talk this? I didn't go to business school. I didn't learn the ins and outs of those things. So I think that stuff matters over time. But I will say, at least though, being a corporate, it did teach me structure. It did teach me management. It did teach me that things have to be, accorded by, just because you won't get things done over time. And it's just like, it's the next man up mentality.
So did you ever, like, on the business side, saying, like, you wasn't really in it to be entrepreneur minded, you know what I'm saying? Did you ever F up, like, with the business on when you started running your own? Like, did somebody like do work and then get paid? That's why I was going to bring up
the major loss thing.
Okay.
Shout out to my partner, John Hill. We went through ups and downs because I was freelancing when I was at ESPN. So, I started, because when I got to ESPN, I stopped like shooting. I was like, yo, I'm going to just, do this or whatever. So then, it wasn't until a year or two in, because my schedules were crazy. My schedules were like 5 p.m. to 2 a.m., like 3 a.m. to 12 p.m. Like, bro, these aren't natural hours. Like,
not at all.
These are
not at all.
Bro, people are asleep. Like, like
you was at the main campus, right?
Yeah, I was in Bristol, Connecticut, and if anybody knows Bristol, Connecticut, which you probably don't, it's nothing to do out there. There's only so much to do. It's like 4.5 hours from Philly, so yeah, it was different. But you kind of had to just take the jump and do it. But I didn't like really know, that per se. But I think over time I was like, I had to at least figure out like what I really want to do, moving forward. So luckily I had an editor with at ESPN who was actually doing freelance on the side, and he was editing. Like, he was like doing this and he was doing like other outside. I was like, bro, how the hell are you doing both? Like, this is impossible. And he was doing both, and I was like, oh, I want to get back to that. Like, I missed that grind, and he motivated me over time. Shout out to my man Eric. But and then we started building that over time, and I started going on shoots and going out to different things. I was like, oh, this is different.
When you got back to shooting yourself, what was you doing?
Oh man, I was shooting like anything: clubs, weddings, music videos. We were just doing different stuff, just trying new things over time, just trying to get my name out there again. I picked up a camera. I started saving up my money from ESPN. I'm gonna be honest, that ESPN salary was not ideal. It got me through, but it was just like, let me save a little bit here and there. And, my rent wasn't too crazy, but, I picked up a Sony or whatever during that time frame. And, it was like, I ain't gonna lie. I was like, yo, this joint like $3,000.
Yeah.
I said, I ain't got that bread. But I was like,
Right.
you know what? I don't know if I used a credit card or not at that time, but I might have, most likely. I was like, I'm gonna pay this off.
Yeah.
And, I picked it up and the rest was history from there. It took a little time, but yeah. Moving forward, going back to the major law, so I didn't want to, go off the rails. But once we started the company, I met my partner, John, and other people, to gravitate towards building my company.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, everybody has has a dream, but not everybody's about that dream. It really takes trust. It also takes, I go back to effort, and also takes diligence. Just because everybody can talk it, but everybody can't walk it. Because it's one thing that you can say you can do it, but like over time, like, are you actually going to put the actual, effort to do those things over time? And I started to realize that like too many people were a part of like trying to start my company, and too many hands in one pot. And people started like, doing this, like, oh, we're going to show up late to here, blah, 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 whatever. So we had to like put some foot down. We're like, okay, well, how do we, go about this over time? And long story short, we had to separate from some people, from the company itself, just so, we had to structure like, okay, we put too many hands in one pot. And, granted, like I thought it was going to be a loss because like, I ain't gonna lie, my partner was low-key willing to give up. He was like, yo, listen, I didn't sign up for this. Like, if y'all not with it, like, blah, blah, blah. But we had a civilized conversation. I sat him down. I said, bro, it's just me and you, and we're just going to take this thing. And he was like, you sure? Like, yo, I'm like, yo, I'm not, he's like, I don't got the time. He was very, like, serious about da-da-da. And I was like, yeah, listen, like, I'll handle this. And, like, and then we had to get law involved, like lawyers and all the other stuff. That's a lot of money. Like, anybody knows lawyers. Like,
Before you even started.
Like,
Wow.
you starting out your own business thinking like, I'm just going to start it, get my LLC, and I'm already in with lawyers. Like, right. Why am I doing this?
Wow.
And, there are also people that are arrogant out there that, think they can, string things along and be like, oh, well, you can't do this to me and But it's just like, bro, like, it's just civilized. But not everybody's civilized, so I get that. It's just, now you have to handle things accordingly. And there were times where I was just like, man, I got to start over again. I got to be by myself. Like, this is what I really want to do. Like, I actually want to form, like, my own thing and, like, maybe get help. Because, like, my partner, I knew he had the knowledge to do it over time. It's just I need help. Like, I know I could possibly do it myself, but I still had to learn and maybe get the help. And he had the knowledge over time. But yeah, that was pretty much a loss. And, we had to, like, put a lot of investment into that over time and forming things, for that. But now, we are, two company owners that we are just like, okay, now this is the structure. We put things in place, and now we are benefiting it from now. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Good joint. Wow. That's a good joint. I feel like you touched on, we brought this up, but we didn't really get into it. How did you even get at ESPN?
Luck. I mean, it goes back to Temple, honestly, though. I mean, somehow they tied in. I don't really know for sure. I don't really know. I just applied. But when I got to ESPN, I was literally, I just applied at like the most random moment. Once I graduated, I was applying everywhere. Like, I didn't even know I had a couple internships that was like valuable. So I was like, okay, I have like the cachet a little bit, so this can make me get it out the door. But yeah, I mean, I started applying to different things, NFL or anywhere, like in general, even just in Philly in general. And yeah, I mean, you know the story. Like I thought I was going to the NFL Network at the time, but unfortunately, I didn't get that. And ESPN came calling like probably 2 weeks after. And yeah, they were like, "Yo, blah blah blah," And granted, this was only a project position. So for the people that don't know at home, it was called a recurring thing. So I was moving to another state for only 8 months to a year. Now, that is not guaranteed that you're going to. Not everybody's going to do that, to willing to jump out to a different state knowing that they might not have that job after that.
That's crazy.
And I took the leap of faith because I'm like, bro, this is ESPN. Like, you know what? I got to just try it. And, I think going back to Temple, since I already had, like, at least two friends of mine who are still dear my friends to this day, that were kind of there. And also, I think they already had cachet too. Like Kevin Nagandi was already there with a Sports Center anchor, and like other people that went to Temple were already kind of there.
Yeah.
So I feel like at least that school kind of held notion, which, you know, like I said, like school still kind of matters in itself. I don't really know. They didn't tell me that for sure. I think they still kind of liked my resume experience, but I think it definitely had to play into it. Yeah, and then once I got that call, you know, the rest was history. And, you know, they kept me after that, you know, 8 months or so after, like, it was like 20, 25 people. It was only like 5 people that got kept.
Dang.
Yeah. And God is good, man. God is certainly good.
Yeah, that's crazy. Did y'all feel pressure to get a job after graduation?
Absolutely.
For a fact. I feel like you feel that pressure before you even I think you feel that pressure before you even start school. Like,
that's why you go, right?
Seriously.
They're like,
literally.
got that resume?
Yeah.
Make sure you sending out this. Make sure you sending out that. Make sure you networking. Go to this event. Get an internship. Fill out this. Fill out that. Do this. Do that.
Mhm.
Like, damn, I gotta pass the semester first. Like,
Can I breathe?
Yeah. Now, when I think about it, when you just said that, I ain't really feel pressure to get a job per se, but I felt pressure to get an internship because I need the internship to graduate
and to get a job. Because they say get an internship so you can get a job.
Yeah. And so I was like, I don't even know where that's gonna come from, and it just end up, you know.
Yeah, I think the pressure that is put on, because you still, I feel like you a baby adult. You're not like a real adult. You might be like, unless your circumstances. I was gonna say your circumstances might have forced you to be an adult. Yeah. But I still feel like the pressure that's put on when you come out of college is still unreal. Like to find, because it's not really that they expect you to just find a job. They really expect you to find the job.
Yes,
right. Coming straight out of graduation is like the job is what they expect you to have.
Yeah. Right.
And I don't even have the right major. Like, people talking about the right job.
It's crazy.
Nah, that's real.
F around, picked the wrong thing for 2.5 years. Now I can't go back.
And then people just stay there.
Yeah.
And many people do.
Yeah,
stay there.
They also don't teach you if it doesn't come, then what?
Right.
Yeah.
How do you handle that?
How do you handle that? What do you do now?
That's a good point.
Do I go find a new job just to make some money? What do I do? Now you're not at home like listen to my parents that's saying, what are you doing? Sit on your butt all day.
Yeah.
Like, go do something. Like so it's a lot of pressure over time.
Yeah.
You know, but I will say, at least from my perspective, like going back to school, like, you know, they made you kind of an adult fast though.
Yeah.
One of my professors, I think her name was Amy Cables, that she literally had us doing, I don't know if you guys did this for sure, but we had to do interviews in front of like our class. So she would interview in front of our class and you had to literally apply for the job that you might be your dream job. Or at least something that you might, you know, want to be in or whatever. And I had to do that. I mean, I ain't gonna lie to you. I was nervous. Like I was, I'm not even like the biggest public speaking type. So it's like, you know, I had to form that over time, at least back then. Yeah. So I was like, oh, this is different. And I was nervous, like, you know, stuttering my words a little bit. But I was like, you know, still, you know, at least practicing over time in the mirror to stand for it. But it kind of at least challenged me to practice that over time once I got to like the real world. And it's funny because that same job that I try to do, or at least through that interview through Temple, you know, I think I still have a picture to this day. It's on the paper, but it says ESPN.
Aww.
Wow, that's crazy.
So
it's crazy.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's pretty crazy. Did I think that was gonna happen? No, but
it's a crazy situation.
So could you walk us through some key moments that led up to the launch of your production company?
Yeah. I think at least going to the launch of it was one, getting the recognition from different people, you know, big time people.
Like who?
LeBron James.
I was about to say LeBron
James. That's on my wall to this day.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't like what? Like, you know what I mean? Like one of the greatest basketball players ever. So to see that, like that's there's a lot of people that I've got recognized that I was like, oh, I can actually do this. And I think it was time for me to start, you know, not just for my name, but for, you know, a brand entity to do that over time. So you know, that was one of those like, at least big moments, like, you know, working with also bigger people like Wale or, you know, other people that, you know, kind of recognize over time, even with certain companies that I work with that were like, oh, this is, you know, even like they were reposting my stuff. So it was like, oh, this is possible. But then like as far as like leading up to it over time, like I knew I had to do it, accordingly. Like at least now getting like an animation or something like an intro or something that down the lines to set the tone. Like, I'm like, this is the real deal, type of thing. And then, yeah, I mean, also just, also going back to family, like I think that's what really mattered to me. Like, can I do this? And do I have the support system to do that over time? And I feel like that was like, my key moments over time. And, a lot of people supported it over time. Like, even when I left ESPN, people were like, oh, I've been waiting for this moment.
Yeah, it's
like,
time. Let's go.
Oh,
time.
really? Yeah, like, oh, I didn't know you was waiting for that, you know what I mean? But it's just like, oh, yeah, okay, now it's the real deal, so let's do it.
So far, what you working for yourself? What's some of your highlights, I guess, since doing that, taking that leap?
I think at least for me, like now, like leaving, the job and starting my own thing, I think now, like I didn't think I was going to be able to work with, at least do some commercial work or doing different things with different people at the level that I was going to be able to do it with. And, work, like I said, going back to working with Wale, like personally, that was work, like that was, I never even dreamt of that, but I definitely try like consistently try to work with different artists over there over time. But, not just with him, but also working with like big name companies, like, with the Phillies I just did recently, with different labels, doing a video for BET that kind of went super viral, like maybe twice.
Yeah.
Over time. Even now, going back now, ESPN hires me to do stuff. So that's
Look
a
at
different,
that full circle.
Man, it's a different type of feel, and they cut the check. But yeah, I'm very blessed. Also, I still have like a good network that built that. So I'm blessed to have that built over time, and to see that come through over time, and now to see some of the content that has going through different platforms over time that that built, and seeing like different people, like going back to that BET thing, like Viola Davis reposted my work, bro.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like what?
That's ridiculous.
That's different. And not only that, like repost, like she took the video and actually like tagged like and everything, like to, hey, this is dope. So to see that type of like recognition, or at least see that you're actually doing something well for yourself and it's impactful. And then some of at least my stuff has been positive, where it's like this has uplifting, and especially for us people of color that can uplift others. So,
yeah. Was there a moment so far in your path that made you feel like validated as a creator, or do you feel like there's still a moment that you're seeking to get that validation?
I don't like validation it's hard because I'm always like hard on myself. I'm like, okay, what's next? Yeah. Like, because, you can get validated when you're like, obviously going back to the content space, or, you creating, like, okay, well, I can do this. Like, I'm him. Like, after that. But then it's only like a brief 24, 48 hours that you're like, okay, now it's like people forgot about you. Yeah. And I ain't gonna lie, like, to open up like real quick, I had like sort of an imposter syndrome, just because I felt like, I was at a higher space to do certain things at a higher level. Then you're like, then you feel like you can't do it anymore. Just because now it's like, oh, you're not doing the same thing, or, you're not reaching those same views that you used to do anymore. So you start to think to yourself, like, maybe I don't got it no more. Yeah. You start to think that even with with athletes or entertainers, anybody in general that has that type of craft, like, I understand now where they're coming from, where in terms of like, sometimes you have to continue to push, because it's like, you don't know where that's coming from, and you can get down on yourself. So it's all part of your mental to build that over time. Hopefully that answers your question. But
I feel that.
What you do to keep your confidence?
I don't know. Honestly, it's literally prayer. To see that I continue to create over time, so that way I can build that. And I think for me also to challenge myself, like reach out to people, try to find new things, like network, going out, and not also just stay complacent. Like I hate complacency, bro. I just hate it, just because of like, granted I'm a victim of it at times, but at the same time, I'm sure we all have. We sit there, we're like, man, I'm going to get this done, but you never do it. It's just like going to get laundry. Like, you're just like, I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? But at the same time, why? Like, you have 24 hours in a day. You have to at least accomplish those things in said 24 hours. And, 365 days in a year, you only have so many days to accomplish said thing. So you utilize your time each and every time. And if you feel like you're doing a disservice to yourself of not getting those things done, then did you really at least make the effort? And I feel like that's where my confidence comes from, is more over time. Like, now I build that because I know I can't be stopped now. Like,
wow,
like that.
I have to.
So like corporate job, you don't work with celebs, you don't worked with bunch of the artists that we listen to. You didn't did the tour life. You didn't have high profile clients and companies.
Yeah.
What's next?
Stay tuned. No, I'm kidding. Honestly, what's next, man, is to grow this company, grow my company, Noir Films. I think this is time to, gravitate to new things, bigger things, and, also grow, not just for myself, but other people. I want to build a team. I want to build a network. I want to build, things to also give other people opportunities that I didn't see coming, you know what I mean? And, see those things through where I can give those things, said things to people. So that way, what I've seen, I can give to those said people over time that I didn't, see in my younger self over time. And, that's the goal. I want to also, at least for specifics, like do commercial work.
Yeah.
Bigger stuff. Like, my dream is to work with Nike.
Call my guy.
If Nike, you listen, I can do it. I don't know where. Whatever. I tweeted it like a couple years ago. I know it may take time. I'm going to keep trying, and, make the effort to build those things over time. But I know, I have the capabilities of doing it. I know I have the gifts. I know I have the talent. It's just a matter of going out to find said things and somebody giving me the opportunity to do it. And, God is great, and I'm sure he will find that, through thick and thin over time. It's just about patience. Patience is a virtue. It's very hard. I'm not a very patient person just because I want it now. But at the same time, I understand there's a process to the things, and like Joel Embiid said, trust the process. So
facts.
It's over time, and it's anything in life in general. So as you build those things over time, you appreciate the journey along the way. So,
well, this has been a great one. I really appreciate you coming out. But before we get out of here, you know what I'm saying? If you had any advice to a young creative coming up, or anybody who want to hop into the creative field and chase their dreams in a similar way as you, what would you tell them?
I think, at least for me, any creative or anybody in life in general, anything that you want to do in life, if you have a dream, it takes effort. I can't stress that enough. At least for me, like, there are so many things that, we want to do in life in general, that, we want to accomplish things. And, do you want to put the work in to do those said things over time? I know it's a lot. I know it's, there's going to be pain throughout, your process over time. There are going to be people that doubt you. There are going to be people that don't like your work. There are going to be people that do. But that's part of the whole process to form you who you are today and who you are to become. So as you build that, don't give up. I was once said at a time that I was, willing to give up, to a certain extent, because I didn't know what the end goal was. And I feel like now, there's at least a bright light at the end of the tunnel. And as that tunnel gets brighter, I'm starting to see that, with the more support that I have and the more people that continue to give me opportunities, that I can see these things through over time. So, take your time. Everything's not a rush. I wish I learned that early over time, but I think I had to go through that process over time. But also, like, judge yourself accordingly too. Every piece that I have made, every content I have made has been the best, hasn't been the worst. But as you build that over time, I think you would learn that, you're only one man band, and you can also continue to grow, as much as you want to. So,
great, John.
Shout out to the winner's culture, though. By the way, this is amazing.
No, and that's exactly what I was about to do. I was about to shout you out, because thank you for coming. I've been inspired by your story, your journey. I seen it the whole way, the long way. You feel what I'm saying? So
I appreciate that, bro.
So I think seeing how you articulate yourself and seeing how your development growth as a man and as a creative is super inspiring. And we happy to have you.
Nah, this is a dope thing that you guys are doing. I hope this continues to grow over time. And, the more people that come through here and, the more people you probably will network from this over time that I think what people will also appreciate, them talking about, their journey over time and seeing that, oh, I've actually, got this far. And you guys showcasing that over time is very key, especially, coming from this city, there's only so much that we can come from over here that there's a lot of people that, trying to pay attention to certain things, but you guys highlighting that is very key. So I appreciate that.
We appreciate you, man. Yeah. If the people want to support you, they want to follow you, they want to tap in with what you got going on, where can they find you?
Follow me, you see the shirt, Noir Films, at the Noir Films. That's my production company. We are still growing over time. I also have social media at Fonrose, Fonrozay. Don't ask me why I've named it like that. That's my last name. But yeah, that's on all social channels, and that's where you can kind of follow me through there, and continue to build from there. So feel free to reach out, and any questions, just let me know.
Facts. Well, that's another one for y'all. Share it with your mom, your aunt, brother, sister, cousin, them. You know how that go.
Man.
Be sure to follow the studio. Shout out to 524 for producing the podcast. You can follow us at The Winners Culture on all of your social platforms and get the podcast on wherever you get your podcast from. So, JJ, where can they find you at?
It's just _JJ.
Blondie, where can they follow you at?
Y'all can follow me at The Blonde Room.
Dang. You can follow me at Just Daryl. But once again, it's The Winners Culture. Till next time.
Holla at you.
Out.